Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here and be here with the Night Owls that are trying to learn a little bit about the entrepreneurial culture. I'm going to try to share with you what we've been doing at Delphi, which is a well-known company in the area, a large company built on engineering, serving the automotive industry, other industries, and talk about intrapreneurship, which is an interesting word. Talk about it in today's economy. I think everybody here is very interested in the job market, how you can develop your careers, what are going to be the hallmarks of the successful companies of tomorrow. We're all painfully reminded by the headlines about where yesterday's companies have sort of arrived at. I think innovation will continue to be a key for all companies. Where companies find the innovation, how it energizes its team to harvest that innovation, turn it into product sales and profits, I think is what it's all about. It is a very unusual time, and I think a time where being an entrepreneur, being an innovator, being an intrapreneur is even more valuable, not only to the company but to yourselves, as you really look to create that path and work your way into careers, work your way into being productive, designing tomorrow's buildings, tomorrow's products. There are a lot of opportunities that are not seen, not acted on, that create value, and that's what we try to do. The Delphi of tomorrow that's emerging from bankruptcy is built on systems and technologies that are safe, green, and connected. The company has divested a lot of the basic metal bending, catalytic converter, brakes, let's say the more commodity-driven lines, and is more focused on telematics, emission control, extending mileage, creating a safer vehicle, and moving into other markets with those technologies. So I'll tell you a little bit about Delphi, a little bit about what I do, which people believe is intrapreneurial. Talk about a couple case studies. I have more slides, and there's time. I want to save time for questions, really try to see how you feel about this topic, see what's on your mind. So I'll just sort of go through these slides, talk about the different points, but to sort of frame it up, you're talking about a company that has an intrapreneurial activity. It's a multinational, it's global, it's in 42 countries. There are 167,000 employees. We're looking at R&D centers all over the planet. There are 32 of those, 16,000 engineers and scientists, a company that spends about $2 billion a year in research, development, and engineering, creating over 150 new technologies and products a year. The downsized Delphi, which is still shrinking, in 2007 was a $22 billion company with a diverse portfolio of products. This will tighten up over the next year as well. Delphi is an important company. It's a company that virtually every production vehicle in the parking lot out here has at least one Delphi component or system or piece of IP in it. Our customer base includes all the production companies, plus many other companies that you might not expect would be involved with Delphi. And the reason for that, and sort of the point behind a lot of my messages tonight, is innovation. So even a company like Delphi, spun out of General Motors, in a situation where the bulk of its sales goes to the automotive sector, it is striving at every turn to look for value and additional products that are built on the R&D and the intellectual property that we've developed for the core products to move into medical devices. We have a medical device division that has leveraged our expertise in telematics and moving fluids and moving gases and metering and sensing and measuring. Things that we've perfected in vehicles can be put in medical devices. XM radio is an industry we have built. We have created more satellite radio devices than anyone, both in vehicle and mobile. It's helped us move our technology into the consumer market with a consumer brand. We are in a lot of military devices and systems. We are in commercial vehicles in an extraordinary manner, motorcycles, marine vehicles. So all of these represent thinking out of the box, going beyond the conventional passenger vehicle, which the company started out in, and getting into leveraging the technologies into other markets. And the engineering firepower that's behind that covers many domains, from advanced materials to electronics, sensors, software, a whole host of areas that allow not only for an individual product, but for the integration into a system. As a result, the company has received a lot of recognition from MIT and IEEE for having developed and maintaining one of the most important IP positions, not only in the automotive sector, but globally as a IP company. Being able to keep current, to stay ahead, does not completely rest with what we do internally. That's, as impressive as that is, it's not enough. And the company, being in its own way entrepreneurial, has extended itself in open innovation, opening up partnerships for R&D with the national labs, universities, small companies, other large companies. The global market for tomorrow's products requires you to be involved with many other types of groups, learning how to interact with them, share the value of the invention, find where you bring the most added value so that they'll want to be involved with you in a collaboration. So in the past, a large supplier or a large OE might not have such a large list, and this is a partial list of groups that they work with outside of their own four walls. The specific thing I do at Delphi is work through that intellectual property portfolio and the different activities at the company to identify ideas that we might be using, that we've invented, that are disruptive. Disruptive meaning that the impact on existing markets is so profound that it will cause people to abandon yesterday's methods or yesterday's products and replace them with something that is faster, cheaper, more capable, more reliable. The disruptive technologies that you see in the marketplace are quite visible in the high-tech sector. The venture capital industry is built upon financing disruptive technologies. And a company like Delphi, a large company with a lot of R&D, if it wants to be very entrepreneurial, it can reach inside and ask the question, what do we have that is significant outside of automotive? Maybe, again, in medical or consumer, military, healthcare, other markets, and create different types of business structures, bring in different types of partners to help bring it into those markets. That's not something we would do. We're focused on our core markets and the adjacent ones. Sometimes the potential of a disruptive technology wouldn't even meet the sales thresholds of a $22 billion company, but it could completely dominate a niche or a subset and just be a very profitable, valuable $50 million company. And so I have several examples. Spaceform, which is a metal welding technology, Monarch Antenna, which is a smart antenna technology, and our lithium battery technology, which we put into a company called Intradel. And I'll tell you a little more about that. I like to try to, with that background, and so I'm in a very large company, thousands of people, billions of dollars of sales, and I'm looking for one or two things to work on that have a lot of high value and are going to be overlooked if I don't do it. If I don't do it, it will go undone. And in being an intrapreneur, being a successful intrapreneur means you have to fit into the organization, you have to be different, you have to do things at a different, with a different vision, different energy level, but you cannot expect to turn a place upside down because you're really very, very much insignificant in the bigger picture. You're one of thousands of people, and there is a culture, there's a style that could be effective where people gravitate to you, support you, want to participate in these new ideas, these new ventures. And I show this slide because what you have to know in a big company when you join it is it's very structured. There's a process, there's an org chart, there are do's, there are don'ts, and you have to understand that, and then you have to innovate on it, you have to extend it, you have to see where you have latitude. People have more latitude perhaps in a lot of their job assignments than they think or they act on. Sometimes they just sort of go back to, this is what my tasks are, this is what's expected, these are the deliverables, here's what I'm going to work on. But the company will, in most cases, be very grateful to people who go beyond that, really understand the business, come up with those good ideas, put in the extra time and effort to show some other application. Those are the people that perhaps in the future will have the better career paths, the more secure career paths, and will be in an opportunity maybe to even leave a large company and become very active in a smaller company. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. When large companies prioritize, I think everybody today knows that the hybrid electric vehicle has become a really big deal. Everybody's talking about it. You've seen the Volt, you've seen the Honda vehicles, the Prius. People are in a big race for it. Delphi is a major supplier of hybrid technologies, but we made a decision that the lithium battery technology that we had developed early in this, and the team at Delphi were the people involved at GM in the EV1, so our heritage goes way back, that the battery itself was going to be a heavily funded race with major companies in it, and we decided that we would focus on, let's say, the system from the battery, so the battery pack up to the engine. There was a lot for us to do, and we would divest the technology and we put it into a small company. We didn't sell it to a large one. We own a piece of the company. The company is now on the American Exchange. They got their first contract with Think for the Think vehicles. And it's a way we've innovated and let some other smaller company blossom with our IP, which I think is in some cases novel. And the point I've been trying to make is you think of Delphi, you think of GM or Ford vehicles, but there's a lot going on. And those are the activities of people that have been thinking out of the box, that have been innovating, that have been justifying moves into motorcycles or marine vehicles or satellite systems. And I take it even a step further. And so, you know, the theme tonight is about being an intrapreneur, and I'm not sure I know exactly what that is, so I'm not sure exactly I know who I am and what I do. So I've tried to look at the literature, look at the experts, and really try to see what they're saying. And I'll show you some slides and talk about them. I think there's some common themes. I think what you're seeing is a individual who's an entrepreneur who is inside a big company, and the rules are the same but slightly different. The risks are similar. There's some differences, and I'll talk about that. So, and I think the things that make an entrepreneur and intrapreneur successful have to do with their energy, their vision, their passion, their persistence, their style, the ability to hear no 5 times, and even go back to hear it a 6th time, and that one became the yes. That's usually what really separates the winners from the losers, because every yes is paved with 5 no's or 50 no's before it. So you don't want to beat a dead horse. On the other hand, these ideas, and especially in you know, changing markets, global markets, recessions, you know, there are a lot of good ideas that aren't going to be acted on today but are good tomorrow, and people should keep pushing on them. In my case, I was surprised to learn this year I won an award for being the Small Business Association of Michigan's Intrapreneur Extraordinaire, and I really tried to look at what they say, you know that person does, and I think what it gets down to is being inside the large company, not being in a defined environment, and trying to turn, in some cases, nothing into something, taking things that are going to be let go because they seem, you know, if they're not seem to be inconsequential, there just aren't enough resources or enough attention on it, and it's going to, you know, go by, it's going to expire, and we try to find these perishable ideas, perishable IP, patents have limited lives, products change quickly, grab them and see what we could do with them outside of the large company. There are other models for being an intrapreneur. I wanted to also mention that in World War II, Lockheed Martin, then Lockheed, was challenged by the Air Force at the time of war to break away really from its established protocols for developing aircraft and create a fighter much faster. That was what was needed. They created a group of people, sort of like the Manhattan Project, and pulled them out of Lockheed, put them off to the side, told them, basically the rules don't apply to you, just get it done quicker. And the famous Lockheed Skunk Works, they coined the word, so you probably heard about Skunk Works, came out of Lockheed. And if you look at the outer band, they have quite a few products that they're making and are planning to make for the future out of their traditional manufacturing and design environment. So there are ways to do that. In today's environment, I think there's always opportunity when times are tough because the hard, fast, set ways are challenged. People have to look at alternatives. That opens the door to innovators. That opens the door to people who might have an idea that in good times, people, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We don't want to change it. Sales are good. Now when a lot of things aren't working, it's an encouraging time. The pressure of lack of funding, of course, is an overwhelming negative in those times, so there's a balance. But it is not a time where people that want to be entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs need to run away from. If anything, it's more welcoming on certain levels. In the state of Michigan, the infrastructure over the last 10 years has been built through the visionaries at the MADC in Lansing to create smart zones, to create centers of excellence, funding opportunities, 21st Century Jobs Funds. These are all programs I participate in. There are quite a few smart people in different regions around Michigan that entrepreneurs can go to, large companies can go to talk about how do we turn a novel idea or novel IP into tomorrow's technology, tomorrow's products. And I think that is really a huge resource. If I was a student today, I would be sure that I had visited some of these groups and got to know some of these people, go to their meetings, see the types of activities they're supporting, because they know how to move this process along. At Delphi, a large company moving the needle on the metrics, $22 billion in sales, what's expected of me, how could these types of activities be important? And I think they are. I think other large companies have plenty of room to have a vision. The vision needs to go to the CEO, who has to help the intrapreneur have access, have resources, have the will of the company to support them, because when you divert resources anywhere, there's other people that are losing resources. Why are you doing it? So you need a culture, you need a vision, you need a CEO that wants to see the company take its products and technologies into new areas. And that is going to be helped or expedited or only made possible by, let's say, unconventional members of the team. People that grow up in an industry see it one way, people that come in from the outside or have the skills of an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, can do things that traditional engineers and business managers cannot do. So people, want to know, is this something I can do? I have a certain way of thinking and looking at the world, working. What does it take to be this type of change agent, a person that makes things happen with very little resources? Things happen from, the earliest idea, and it's not for everybody. A lot of people are very good development scientists, not basic scientists applied. So there are different types of people. This type of person needs to be somebody who is certainly not introverted. You're selling, you're talking to people, you're building a constituency, you're building a following, you're getting people to incrementally believe in an idea, willing to sacrifice for it. The passion level has to be high. You don't have to be silly with that. Some people who are in the high-tech business view themselves, as being evangelical with it. I think that's a good thing to an extent. But these things are built on value propositions. They're built on unmet needs in the marketplace. They're built on being, a large company. It's being built on being a little more stealth or a little quicker footed through this alternative organization or structure to get your value out of the market. So high energy, extroverted, I think are key traits. This slide's a little jumbled, but I think the point I was trying to make with it is that there are more similarities than differences. I think the biggest difference is that an entrepreneur, your money's in your wallet. You might have mortgaged your house. You own part of the business. If it works, you're going to make a ton of money. If it fails, you might go bankrupt. You have everything riding on it. The entrepreneur, to a larger extent, can seek refuge in the payroll and the big infrastructure, the big company, have less personal risk, and also have, let's say, less personal upside. There are issues in the culture of the large company that with these spin-outs, you don't want your best scientists abandoning the mothership to go to a spin-out. They might be able to make $5 million personally, but the big company loses somebody who's helped them develop $1 billion in sales. So there's sort of a balance of how you use these activities to energize the R&D people, but not cause jealousy or have them migrate over. Change, people have talked about where change comes from and what type of people do that, and I think being an entrepreneur has an element of that, but that's not your real mission. Your real mission is to find value, go in and harvest it and turn it into value and profits for the company. There are people who will be around you who are very interested in change because they'll have a great idea that the company hasn't gone with, and you're going to be the one to do it for them. In terms of a creed, I think adaptive persistence is really a good one, being nimble. Everything changes. You want to keep the ball moving. You want to roll with the punches. You want to keep your idea alive. And you're always getting shot down. It's always getting moved around. It's very easy to just dump it. And you got to keep it going. And all of a sudden the music changes and it becomes very popular. And that's because you kept it alive for 2 or 3 bad years. And I think that type of juggling, multitasking, being optimistic, being reasonable. You can't be too optimistic because then it will definitely get dumped. You have to bring it along. And again, I'm trying to just point out, what is that job description if you wrote it? And I think what I like, on this slide is to talk about people who, are scientifically and then business-wise curious. People that, will ask the what if and the why not and how else can you do that and really work it and keep working it and rework it, because new ideas and new technologies need that. If you want inspiration, go to the Henry Ford. I still go to it, and go to Edison's lab and see the lab where he had to do 1,000 experiments on the filament for the light bulb. It would have been very easy at 888 different filaments to give up. He kept going. Now, there are some people who will pursue the wrong thing until they exhaust themselves and their finances and the companies, but that passion, that drive is, you can't do this without it. And another way to try to give you some understanding of an intrapreneur is, if you had one, how would you give them a bonus? And so I try to think about that, and I think the couple keys here are, like an entrepreneur, it's pretty much an all or nothing. So in a traditional job, you get partial bonuses. You did a pretty good job. You didn't get everything done. You get something. I think if I was going to compensate, people on my team, if on a bonus level, you get a lot if it happens. You get nothing if it doesn't happen. And how you build to that, you're getting credit for showing up and building a team and putting an idea together and getting the funding of it. And I think when you have a funded business plan as an intrapreneur, you've done your job. The steps to take that and turn it into a business, into a product line, I think that becomes the job of other people, the people that are going to run the business. An intrapreneur is going to put it together. somebody else is going to turn it into a viable business. So I think there is a line there that you do not need to be responsible for. Although you're very interested in it because you want to see the thing work, so you're always sort of vested with it. In a large company, I think as you get your jobs and you start to see how they're organized and all the different groups of people, my advice is learn about everybody and find a group that you can work in where the people there are flexible, are open to new ideas, they're not going to shut you down, where they have a pipeline up the chain of command. So if your group sees something, you see a way to save money, make money, that it's going to work its way through the organization so it can happen. Because if it happens, then your group is going to look great, your security and your compensation is going up. If you're in a group that stifles it or they're just so focused, then maybe that's not the right group for you if you want to be around entrepreneurial activities. So I think learning a lot about a company might be harder in a tough job market to pick and choose, but once you're in, there are people there I think are visionaries, thought leaders, and those are the people to find and bump into. What I try to point out in this slide, coming now back to what we specifically do in doing spin-outs of technology into companies, is you need processes. It can't just be we just heard this great idea and now we want to go do something. I mean, that happens too, but I think in a big organization they respect process. It helps you bring people along, create consensus, and so a scoring system to systematically evaluate intellectual property is what we do, and look at the intellectual property, the technology, the market for it, what it costs, how long it takes to get to market. We get inputs from a whole range of people, internally, outside experts, early adopters. And when you put all of that into the soup, some are going to rise up, and in that froth, you won't know what DRW means, but that's this welding technology. It received the most points. Now, if you're an intrapreneur, you've already built a consensus of a lot of people that says that one looks like a big winner, we should probably do something extra on it. And then as you start to look at what that is, you have this supporting you, and you started to build credibility, you started to build support, because it's not just saying something loudly, you really have to have the data and back it up. And when you go through that process, I think the other thing people should think about is, which is not talked about a lot, and I have a colleague who's an incredible inventor, and so this is really his slide that I've borrowed, but he looks for the hidden value in technology. So if we developed a coating for a brake, and everybody's all excited and killing themselves to get that on a brake and make a buck doing that, well, can you put that coating on, pots and pans, electric connectors, on surfaces? Where else could you do that, and who would do that, and what does it take to show it could be used for those other applications? And maybe they're even more valuable than putting it on a brake. And as you start to do that analysis and look at the value, what we do is we try to understand, is it a little bit, maybe that's a license play, or is it really significant? In the case of the metal welding, being able to put two tubes together in 1 second is a big deal. And so we started to see, which I'll show a few slides on, that it goes well beyond automotive and has the potential that even NASA has been financing it for years in a multi-million-dollar project for things they want to put on the moon and Mars. So you have to get to those other people, and as an intrapreneur, you need to have a network. You need to have access to people. You need to read divergent publications. You need to know what people are doing in other areas to know what their unmet needs are, so you can connect the dots. Because even in large companies, it's always fun to get a couple people together in a meeting that work 100 feet apart for 10 years and have no idea what the other person's doing, and that's not that uncommon. And if you get them together, you might find some value. The other way you find that value, and as you evolve an idea and you have these metrics that it's a great idea and you get the high score and people believe in, and you identify the other markets, the people in the other markets say, that sounds good, but you got to show me. So we pursue incubators. Incubators is sort of a focused scientific activity to create proof of concepts, other prototypes, bring in early adopters who will work with us so we can take our technology to their market, create samples so they could compare what they're currently doing or what they would like to do but have nothing that lets them get there. So they could say, you know what, that really does work. I really would buy that. And now you're building demand, now you're building a business, basically, a business in waiting. And so entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, we like incubators. That's how you're going to get your today's application into tomorrow's application. You have to show it. And so for the spin-outs, and you know, that's what I do, that's how I manifest being an intrapreneur. It's about unmet needs, other markets, and showing these value propositions. Incubators let you do that because if you show a customer, you know, a 1-second weld cycle versus 36 seconds, and you start to go through needing 5 weld cells instead of 38 weld cells to do 10,000 parts a day, all the numbers start to fall in line that tomorrow's factory can have fewer people, higher quality product, and you have to show that. You have to show why it's disruptive. Now, once you can do that, you can start to attract investors to really grow and build a business, be able to produce it, be able to serve those markets. And being an intrapreneur means you're doing what the entrepreneur does if he developed that weld cell in his garage, but doing it in a large company and fitting into the culture. So I've been mentioning the welding, so I'll talk a little bit about that because it is something we work a lot on, and we have a lot of people that have helped us with it. And basically, you know, briefly, joining 2 tubes or a tube to a sheet generally, you know, involves a line of sight weld by a MIG or a TIG welding device that goes around it. There are issues with strength, with leakage, different materials. And we have a process that just pushes 2 tubes together with electric current and force, and they stay together and create a weld. And it's something Delphi has just launched for our first part for an airbag system component. But when we looked at this, we said, well, we know, you know, things like that, but who else could use it? And there were so many that you know we've had multiple ways to approach the market. One is we started a company called Spaceform. The state of Michigan, Automation Alley, are shareholders in it. NASA supported it with this grant for a number of years. It's going after primarily the automotive market, but those are divergent products. Those are space frames for vehicles. We have a lot of designers here. If you look at vehicle design, space frame gets you away from stampings to hydroformed and tubular parts. You take out weight, you stiffen vehicles. Every race car is a space frame. So it's something people want to get to. It's also a technology that works in plumbing and heat exchangers, picnic tables, things with tubes, and how do you join them. So we have, you know, and the point here is there's more than one way, and sometimes you have to follow all of those ways. So Delphi doesn't make industrial heat exchangers that are in refineries and chemical plants. These things are 60 feet long and can have up to 800 tubes. Right now they're all hand welded, and they have to be tested, and they have to be leak proof, and all of these things, and sealed. And we have, you know, the system that just zaps and goes right down the line with a robot and makes the weld. And so to do that, we have a consortium of companies we've never dealt with that are in that space. And they're developing the application, getting it into market. For Spaceform and for vehicles, we have this down at the Smart Zone at Tech Town, and Automation Alley in the state of Michigan are co-investors in it, NASA as well, to develop these types of applications, getting into replacing roofs and frames and different types of assemblies with lighter weight tubular hydroformed parts, and being able to join those in a cheap, fast process, which is one of the bottlenecks. And so Spaceform is an entrepreneurial company, and it's one of the creative things we did, because this particular innovation, which you saw earlier, had our highest score when we did it about 5 years ago for that group. has many markets. You need different paths. So how do you innovate? Well, there's no limit on how you can innovate. You have to keep looking, and as you add value, the large corporation will keep betting on you and giving you a little more. And I think in terms of time, we're still pretty good for a little bit more. So then what we'll do is I'm going to stop here. I'll just show this one picture behind me. This is the Smart Antenna Company, which is at Ann Arbor Spark. Michigan State is a shareholder because they co-developed the IP with us. And Automation Alley and both Monarch Antenna and Spaceform have websites. You can look at those. But let me stop here and just see what people would like to talk about, what questions you might have. And so I'll open it up. There has to be at least one hand raised somewhere back there. Yes, thank you.
What types of technologies at Delphi have you been responsible for?
Well, we're responsible for all the technologies, and so they all filter through us, and I look at every one of those, in those different domains from materials to electronics. And so we have, 3 of these that we have spun out, the Interdel, the Monarch, and the Spaceform over the last couple of years. And then there's a pipeline with things like infrared sensors in it and nanomaterials that we're developing, doing incubators, doing the precursor steps to show they have value propositions in other markets and key customers that were willing to be early adopters of it. So there are a few of them. It's not, it's not dozens and dozens, but that's okay for disruptive ones. There are hundreds that get licensed. So there's different incremental technologies are licensed. So we, if we could do one of these a year, we'd be very happy.
So is it like an intrapreneurial team that you have working there, or is it you personally that are?
Well, I do it personally, and then I have a fellow from Wayne State, a Adams fellow that I mentor for a year at a time who works directly with me. And my different Adams fellows, I'm on my 4th one. They tend to transition into these projects and companies. And then we have a staff that I get a lot of assistance from in different ways, whether it's legal, accounting, technology, or in the division. So I pull resources from people who give me anywhere from 1% of their time to maybe 30%, whatever is really needed in each case. But I drive the process.
Timelines from idea to having a Monarch Antenna actually producing something. What's the timeline with average?
Well, what in our case, it's years. It's definitely years, and we're living with these technologies and watching them as we develop their primary use for our core product. And so over a period of years, you're seeing it, get into that first Delphi product. And as that's happening, you're learning more about it. And you might spend 3 years really understanding. I work with the University of Michigan and the business school over there. I bring one potentially disruptive technology through the curriculum each year. So we're doing one now on a fire-resistant material. And it takes a number of years, and then if it really starts to gel, then the next set of stages takes another 1 to 2 years to really have external partners, resources, and then be able to say, over here we have it being tested for something else, and there might be a different financing, there might be a grant, there might be a spin out. So it takes that number of years. And then it'll take another 5 to 7 to really get it in the market and see it go. So it's at least 10 years from the idea to, let's say, a cash out. Anyone else?
As far as your 1-second welding process, I would imagine it's thin wall materials. Can you speak on the capacity of that as far as how thick a material or its extreme capabilities?
Well, it's extremely effective thin wall. So, for example, one sweet spot would be things like exhaust applications, because it creates a perfect seal. And so for the heat exchangers and gases, that's good. It could go comfortably up to 2.5 to 3 mils in thickness. There have been some things we've done at 5 mils for like trailer hitches, and the amount of current and force you need really starts to go beyond what's practical. So in a low volume application, something really specialized, maybe you would do that. But to be able to use it in fuel lines, fuel handling, suspension parts, exhaust, and also in some of these frame elements, that's sort of the best application for it, and it works with dissimilar materials. That's another plus with it. And we've been able to do things like titanium and stainless steel, and that's one of the things NASA needs for their system, and aluminum and other materials. And so there's a lot of R&D. That's why for certain markets, they'll say, that looks great for metal. Can you do this and this? Now, that might take you 2 years, 3 years to do, right? But that's what you do. And to get there, you might say, well, let's get NASA or somebody else to pay for it because, we're not. And so that's where you have to be an entrepreneur, even though the corporation owns it. That's a very good question in terms of the timeline. It's not fast. Some people might tell you it's fast. If they are, then I missed that one. Anyone else? What do we? No more. It's too late. Everybody's tired or something or cold. Over here, one more.
If you have, say, a 10-year turnaround time before you're making profit off one of these new technologies, how is that weathering the economic downturn right now as far as like that group within Delphi? I mean, does it put you in a good position where they're wanting to put money into your department because in the long run it's going to be profitable, or is it something that's kind of at the head of the chopping block for when they need to make cuts?
well, I'm still here, so that's part of the answer. But to put it in the right context, we have a portfolio of 7,000 patents, many of which are 10 years old, right? And we have a lot of things that we already have 5 and 6 years in. So a lot of those first critical questions have been answered, and let's say what's left is the next 4 years of bringing in the early adopter in the new market, right, for that application, and then prove the value proposition, and then create an operating structure to serve that market. The first 6 years of that are done for a lot of things. Now, there's always new stuff. But it's a big company, so you have a mix, and that's a good thing. The value we create is also in a couple other ways. So a lot of these technologies we'll continue to use for our own application, and the spin-out will do their own thing. But as the spin-out creates its own funding, its own people, we'll have access to their improvements. So on a daily basis, before the big cash out, we might be delivering value back to the company where technology we're using now as improvements that were developed outside of Delphi. And that's something you could use right then and there, and now you have, if you will, you're leveraging your engineering reach and port. So there are different ways as well, but the company likes this activity. It also has a good impact in the community, especially here with all the need for the new economy. And you can't have the new economy unless you have innovation, and the university is one place that happens, the individual is another. And buried deep in the big company, my thesis is the third place. And so it's important to bring that into the community. And in each of these ventures, we are not contributing cash. So it has to be good enough that other people want to put up the development money. And that's a very big sign of endorsement. So the things we do have a pretty good metric for the company in a different set of ways. And so looking good.
So the intrapreneurial segment of business is sort of a kind of safe zone, because I know entrepreneurial, you take a lot of risk if you're going out entrepreneurial, but being that you're intrapreneur, you're already within the company, it kind of creates a safe zone?
Well, you know, success creates the safe zone. And there are, you know, in an environment like this, you know, there really are no safe zones, because really good things are being chopped at companies, whether it's Citigroup with 50,000 people or what's happening here anywhere else. So I think the part that makes it a little more of a safe zone, if you can get some time under your belt, is it's very hard to cut things that make a lot of money for the company, right? And don't cost a lot. But it takes time to get to that point where you have some results also. So there's a vulnerable point where there's a lot of stuff in the air, and you know, when they start to cut key products and you're doing fringe stuff, the fringe doesn't look that important. So the other point I didn't make is to really do this in a large company, the only way it works is the CEO has to want to do it and back it. And so, you know, whether it's Rodney O'Neill or J.T. Battenberg, they each have 180,000 employees. They each know exactly what I've done. You know, so you need that visibility. And last year, Mr. O'Neill won an award for supporting these activities, so he knows other people care about it. So I would hope that in Michigan more companies start to do this, but it will be a cost center in the beginning, right? So you do have that problem. And I don't think there are any job descriptions with the word intrapreneur on it either. So you have to, this is sort of a skill set that could be within a lot of other job descriptions, right? Where you, all of a sudden you're the one who has the idea to save some money, or why can't we get some people to bring it into another market? Here's a way to do it.